When people discuss Mario Party on the Nintendo 64, typically discussion surrounding Mario Party 1 and 2 tends to dominate that conversation. However, Mario Party 3 usually isn't discussed too much, and there's probably a couple of reasons for that. Mario Party 3 sold fewer copies than Mario Party 1 and 2, and it came out in late 2000 in Japan and mid-2001 for all other regions. This was really close to the end of the Nintendo 64's life. The GameCube and PS2 were released later that year, so people were definitely less interested in buying Nintendo 64 games at this time. Despite this, Mario Party 3 plays an instrumental role in the series' evolution. So, welcome back to Mark's Rec Room, and today we're talking about Mario Party 3, the experimental and overlooked party game. Mario Party 3 keeps a lot of what worked well in Mario Party 2 and expands upon it while providing some of its own ideas. One of the most notable changes is that players can now hold up to 3 items at any given time instead of just 1. This is great because it allows for more strategic plays where you may want to save items for later and combine multiple items to pull off a big brain strategy. This also nerfs the plunder chest as well, since it will now only steal 1 random item from your opponent and you must wait for 1 turn before you can use it, which is a great change. Another great minor change is that you can now throw items away, so if you have too many skeleton keys, you don't have to wait until you get to a skeleton key door to get rid of one. Mario Party 3 features all of the same space types while adding in a new one, the Game Guy space. Here, Game Guy will take all of your money and force you to bet it all in one of 4 luck-based minigames. If you win, your money will increase exponentially. If you lose everything. From a competitive standpoint, I could potentially see why somebody might hate being forced to wager all of your coins on a luck-based minigame, but I personally think that Game Guy is great. Game Guy captures the spirit of Mario Party perfectly, and there are only 2 of these spaces on each board, so you can avoid them if you really want to. Another change that I really like is that item minigames and duel minigames are no longer tied to the boards, which is a major improvement and reduces a lot of redundancy. However, chance time was definitely nerfed and is a lot more scripted now, which is a major bummer. There's also this really interesting mechanic where there are a couple of spaces before a skeleton key door, so if you choose not to go through the skeleton key door, you can bounce off the door and go over to the spaces in front of the door again. So you could potentially bounce off the door and take some spaces off of your roll to try to land on a different space than you would have normally if you continued down that path. I like this, it provides more opportunities for players to strategize. One confusing change to me though is that if you land on a battle minigame space, there's a chance that you could be battling for 0 coins, which means that nothing happens. I just don't really get why this was implemented. A more contentious change that Mario Party 3 adds that I really like is action time. There are happening spaces on each map that will initiate an action time event, where players will need to make a quick decision in a quick time event. So for example, in Chilly Waters, there's this snowball that will roll towards players and they need to figure out if they want to jump over it and remain where they are, or if they want to be chased by it to the next area. I like this because it forces players to make quick decisions and provides them with even more agency. This definitely makes Mario Party 3 feel like it rewards strategy and skill more and makes it feel a lot less random. One last change that I want to mention is in reference to the item spaces. I've mentioned this in my previous videos, but I think that single player minigames are really bad for the party game experience. It sucks to grind the game's pace to a halt to force everybody to watch one person play a minigame that doesn't usually affect anybody else but them. Duels are fine though, because usually the stakes are a lot higher and the results will likely affect the standings, so the players who aren't engaged in the minigame are likely still interested in the outcome. But watching one person play a minigame that is pretty much inconsequential for the other players is boring. Mario Party 3 does include item minigames, but there is also a chance that Toad or Baby Bowser will come down and ask the player a question. Answer in the way that you think that that character would like, and you will be rewarded with items. This is great because it's quick, it's charming, and the other players won't get bored during this interaction. There is a little bit of luck added here, but I think that it's a fine trade-off, and these quizzes help to supplement the item minigames and keep the game moving. Mario Party 3 features an insanely robust selection of items this time around. There are 2 types of item shops, Toad's and Baby Bowser's. Toad's shop features items that you can use to increase your odds or help yourself, while Baby Bowser's shop features offensive items that you can use to hinder your opponents, which I think is cool. It does kind of suck that these shops appear at random though. I would have preferred that one shop on the board was consistently Toad and another was consistently Baby Bowser, but it is what it is. The only item from Mario Party 2 that doesn't make a return here is the Bowser Bomb, which is totally fine by me as that wasn't even an item that players could use, it would just automatically activate at the end of the turn. However, you can now buy the Boo Bell and the Bowser suit from the shop, which is great. I like that the Boo Bell can be purchased because now players will be forced to choose whether they want to buy the Boo Bell and potentially steal a star at a higher cost, or if they want to purchase the Genie Lamp and gain another star at a cheaper cost. Items in this game are cheaper as well, which is fine, but but I think I preferred the more expensive prices to help keep the game more balanced. However, Mario Party 3 adds a plethora of new items that I think are fantastic. There's the Lucky Lamp, which allows you to change the location of the star, the Cellular Shopper, which allows you to access the shop from any location on the map, Boo Repellent, which will automatically prevent Boo from stealing from you as long as it is in your inventory. The Poison Mushroom can be used on any player and will limit their dice rolls from 1 to 3. The Bowser Phone allows players to call Bowser on any player, and the Item Bag gives a player 3 items at random. However, my favorite item is the Reverse Mushroom. This item allows you to force any player to roll backward on their next turn, but this can also be used for some 4000 IQ plays where you can roll backwards into a star space or a Boo. This item is so good, and I cannot believe that it hasn't made a return since. However, there are also 4 rare items that can only be obtained through an item space, a hidden block, or an item bag, and they are extremely powerful. The Barter Box swaps the user's items with their opponents, the Koopa card allows a player who passes the bank to withdraw everything in their reserves, the Lucky Charm allows the user to force any player into a Game Guy minigame, and the Wacky Watch, which brings the game to the last 5 turns, potentially removing or adding turns to the counter. This is insanely rare, obviously, but these items are incredibly powerful and allow for insane strategies. The item system in Mario Party 3 is incredible. These items allow for so many unique strategies and are so much fun to use. This item system absolutely blows the items from Mario Party 2 out of the water, but unfortunately a lot of these items never came back. Mario Party 3 introduces and refines a lot of the mechanics from Mario Party 2 and sprinkles in a lot of its own ideas, both minor and major. However, how are the boards this time around? Mario Party 3 has 6 boards: Chilly Waters, Deep Bloober Sea, Spiny Desert, Woody Woods, Creepy Cavern, and Waluigi's Island. From this point onward, 6 boards is the standard amount of boards moving forward, which I think is a good selection to choose from. Mario Party 2 has a fantastic selection of boards, so Mario Party 3 certainly has some big shoes to fill. So let's talk about these boards from worst to best. Creepy Cavern is a pretty blech Tide Island board. The only 2 walkable paths between the 2 halves of the board are blocked off by skeleton key doors, which doesn't really feel necessary. The only other way to travel between these 2 halves is to land on one of these happening spaces where the Thwomp's minecart will chase them to the other side, or to pay 5 coins at this action time event to jump onto the minecart. I don't really care for this, since players will often be stuck on one half of the board and will have to either hope to land on a happening space or bring a skeleton key to one of these doors. Another central mechanic here is Womp King. He'll block a certain part of one of the halves of the board, and players need to either give him an item or land on the happening space right in front of him. I really hate this mechanic since this board was restricting and claustrophobic already. Adding Womp King to restrict the board even more really does this board no favors, and I am not a fan of it at all. It's really drab, restrictive, and boring, honestly. Creepy Cavern isn't the worst thing ever, but I will never choose it over any other board in Mario Party 3. Spiny Desert is so close to being a good board. This board has a unique mechanic where there are 2 star spawns, but one of them is a mirage. If you approach the mirage star, it will disappear, and players will then know where the real star is. This is a neat idea, even though it adds an additional layer of luck. It provides an interesting dynamic where players will pursue different stars in the hopes that theirs is the real one. The action time is cool too, where you have to time your jumps over these 2 cacti. If you hit either of them, you'll be bounced over to their signpost on the map. I really like this because it's skill intensive and allows players to strategize about their placement on the map and determine which cactus they want to bounce off of. The cacti are really good examples of how action time can elevate Mario Party into a more strategic oriented experience. My biggest problem with this map is the quicksand pits. If you land on any of these happening spaces, you'll be sent over to the other quicksand pit along with anybody else in the circle. The problem with this is that there are way too many happening spaces in these circles, so you're likely going to be sent back and forth multiple times and get stuck here. Also, if it's the last 5 turns, you have to duel whoever is in the quicksand pits with you, since you both will be spit out onto the same space, which makes this game drag way more than it should. My final nitpick is that I think that the skeleton key doors are too restrictive on this map and really hinder progress. Honestly, if the skeleton key door was removed, I think that the board would be much more walkable and thus much better as a result. I really like Spiny Desert from a conceptual standpoint, but its execution leaves a lot to be desired. Deep Bloober Sea is a pretty alright board. This board is split up into 2 halves, and the main mechanic is this central junction. You have to hit one of these 4 buttons, and if you set off the torpedo, it will knock you over to the other path. This is basically Goomba's Flower Lottery from Peach's Birthday Cake, except it's free and doesn't trap you in an infinite where you lose a lot of money. The happening spaces here will put you onto the other side of the gap, which happens a lot and can be a little bit frustrating. The action time here allows players to either mash and stay on the top left of the board or get thrown to either the top right or bottom left of the board. This mechanic is cool, but unfortunately this board just winds up being just alright in my eyes. There's nothing particularly bad about it. You'll likely get placed onto the other side of the board more than you want to be, but I don't think that this board is really all that unique or memorable, honestly. Waluigi's Island is a really weird board. Honestly, I'm conflicted about it. This board is an absolute mess of ideas thrown together, which does fit Waluigi's character. In the center of the board, there's an action time event where players must time their jump to go in one of 4 directions. This is a really good usage of the action time mechanic, and it forces players to stay on their toes throughout the entire board. On the top left of the board, there are 2 drawbridges that lead to an island that has spaces that all change after every turn. This is a crazy mechanic that I really like. It's really out of the way, but going here is an incredible risk and can really shake up the gameplay. Towards the beginning of the board, there is a counter that will count down every time a player lands on a happening space. Once the counter reaches 0, all of the players in the circle will lose all of their coins. This mechanic is reminiscent of Bowser's coin beam from Spaceland from Mario Party 2, which I think is cool. This map is strange though, because there are more mechanics here as well that are less fun. There are warp pipes that lead to the start of the board, which is a little lame since they make the board feel more linear, and there's also this booby trap in the top right. Here, there's a 50-50 chance that you'll either pass normally or get sent back to start, which just seems unnecessary to me, honestly. I just find this board to be such a weird mess of ideas without any attempt to blend them together naturally, which just leaves me confused. Woody Woods is a pretty cool board. The main gimmick here is that these 3 junctions will either send players left or right and change each turn. Players can also pay Monty Mole to change the signs, or they can land on the happening spaces right before them to change them as well. It's a lot like the blue and red doors from Luigi's Engine Room, except this mechanic is implemented much better here and feels a whole lot less random. The signpost changes are also a lot more predictable in Woody Woods than they were in Luigi's Engine Room. If you land on one of these 3 happening spaces, Woody will initiate an action time, allowing you to either get a coin fruit, which gives the player 5 coins, or a dice fruit, which will allow the player to roll again. Inversely, these 3 happening spaces are managed by Evil Woody, who will force the player to either take the minus coin fruit, which will take away 5 coins, or a minus dice fruit, which will force the player to roll backward. This mechanic is great. It's a simple but effective usage of the action time mechanic and allows players to make an impactful split-second decision. There's a good amount of things about this board that I like, and my only real complaint about it is that I wish there were more junctions that players can make decisions at. Other than that, Woody Woods is a pretty good no-nonsense board. Chilly Waters is easily my favorite board in Mario Party 3. This board features a central junction and a longer outside route with a variety of paths to weave in and out of the center. Along the outside, the happening spaces will prompt the snowman to throw a snowball up, and you can either jump over it and stay where you are, or get chased to the next portion of the board. This can also be initiated by paying the snowman as well, which is really cool. This is the best implementation of the action time mechanic in my opinion. It tests your timing and forces you to make a split-second decision while potentially putting others in a position where they'll need to make that same decision. In the center, there's a major junction that provides a useful shortcut to the outer sections of the board. However, 2 players cannot land on the center here, or else the ice will crack and send everybody out. I like this mechanic since it forces players to get in and get out of the center quickly and pay attention to their opponent's placements. However, there's one small problem with Chilly Waters. When you try to exit the center, there's a chance that you will slip and fall on these ramps. It's very possible that players could get stuck here due to bad luck, which really sucks. This additional luck doesn't add anything to this board and unfortunately brings down an otherwise fantastic board. The boards in Mario Party 3 are generally pretty good. I don't think that the boards here are quite as good as the boards in Mario Party 2, but I think that they still complement the item system well and provide players with lots of opportunities to make decisions and strategize. The biggest problem here is that all of these boards have an Achilles heel that prevent them from being great. The random ramps in Chilly Waters, the quicksand pits in Spiny Desert, and the booby trap in Waluigi's Island are some prime examples of these additional elements that are over the top and hurt the board as a result. I appreciate that these boards are pretty ambitious, but for a lot of them, less would have been more. However, I've talked about these boards long enough. Let's talk about the minigames. So, for these minigames, I'll be rating them on a scale from 1 to 10 and finding the mean, median, and mode for Mario Party 3's minigames and seeing where they stack up against the other Mario Party games. A big plus here is that Mario Party 3 features entirely original minigames. No minigames here are recycled from Mario Party 1 and 2, and that is great news. Mario Party 3 only introduces one new type of minigame though, the Game Guy games. There are 68 minigames that players can encounter through normal play, and the minigames that I'm excluding from this list are Stardust Battle, Dizzy Dingies, and Mario's Puzzle Party Pro, since they're all single player and don't appear in multiplayer gameplay. With that out of the way, here are my ratings for all of the minigames in Mario Party 3. Treadmill Grill is an okay survival minigame. Ice Rink Risk is another good survival minigame, but this one is definitely more hectic. Parasol Plummet is a surprisingly decent coin collecting minigame. Messy Memory is a great memory minigame that is challenging and encourages screen peeking. Picture Imperfect is a decent timing minigame. MPIQ has an interesting premise, but terrible execution. The questions can range from insultingly obvious to random stats about the specific copy that you're playing, which is cool. However, players can box their opponents out by just mashing and guessing, which drags this minigame out for way too long. Curtain Call is a pretty easy memory minigame. It's too easy for everyone to get all three right. Cheap Cheap Chase is an alright timing minigame, but it pretty much just devolves into mashing at the end. Snowball Summit is a fun, aggressive minigame where you'll try to build your snowball up while protecting yourself from oncoming attacks. Toadstool Titan is almost okay, but involves too much luck for my taste. Aces High is a really boring dogfighting minigame. Bounce and Trounce is a really interesting minigame that forces you to play aggressively. Chip Shot Challenge is almost cool, but if you go last, you have a major advantage because you can just copy what all the other players do. Mario's Puzzle Party is a phenomenal puzzle minigame that emphasizes lining up combos. The Beat Goes On has a fitting name. This minigame can last for like 3 minutes and is way too easy and can end in a draw. This is a contender for one of the worst Mario Party minigames of all time. Water World is a fun boat racing minigame. Frigid Bridges is a great pathing minigame. Awful Tower, you got that right. Pipe Cleaners is a really fast-paced reaction minigame with a unique control style that I like a lot. Rockin' Raceway is a really good resource management minigame. Coconut Conk requires some decent team coordination, but I think that this one is weighted towards the 3. Spotlight Swim is incredibly weighted towards the 3. Boulder Ball is also weighted towards the 3, but the 1 can do well here if they know what they're doing. Crazy Cogs is a better version of Shock Drop or Roll, but the bullet bills are a little too random for my liking. Hide and Sneak is alright and has some mind games, but it kind of boils down to luck. River Raiders is another Reaganomics minigame, but it's a little bit better balanced than Coin Shower Flower. Title Toss is impossible for the 1. The 3's invincibility frames last for way too long. Hand, Line, and Sinker is way too finicky to control for both teams. It also goes on for far too long. Ridiculous Relay is amazing. The 1 flies on this hang glider, avoiding a lot of obstacles, while the 3 have 3 different control styles to cycle through. This is a rare, incredibly balanced 1 vs 3 minigame, and it is really fun for everybody involved. Thwomp Pole is another well-balanced minigame, although this one is reaction-based. It's great. Eats a Pizza is a phenomenal minigame where you need to mash fast, optimize your pathing, and coordinate with your teammate. Also, I love this one's theme too. Baby Bowser Broadside is a really boring minigame, and these walls get in the way too frequently. Cosmic Coaster is a great minigame where you dodge obstacles. Puddle Paddle is really boring, and you just have to hope that he throws you coins. Logjam is a pretty decent reaction minigame. Pump, Pumpin' Away is a good minigame where you need to time your pumps, very similar to Balloon Burst from Mario Party 1 and 2. Hyper Hydrants is a pretty boring minigame, and I don't really think that this one had to be a 2v2. Picking Panic is a great timing minigame where you need to coordinate with your teammate. Etch and Catch is another great minigame where you need to work with your teammate to surround the stamp. Slot Sync is like a boring version of Toad in the Box from Mario Party 2. Stack Deck is a boring, slow RNG minigame. Three Door Monty is a really great minigame where you need to memorize the character's locations and react faster than your opponents. Merry Go Chomp is a decent RNG minigame. Slapdown is a really great reaction minigame where you'll be punished for jumping the gun. Locked Out is bad. Either you spawn near the correct key or you don't. All Fired Up is an interesting take on the avoid the hazard type of minigame. Storm Chasers is interesting and it's fun to box out your opponents, but it's really unpredictable where the cloud will go and you can get screwed over by bad luck. Eyesore is another pretty interesting minigame, but you can get screwed over by random fire spawns. Pretty decent minigame otherwise. Vine With Me is a really fun timing minigame. Playing this with another person who knows how the minigame works will really test both of your skills. Pop Gun Pickoff involves reaction, aiming, and mashing. It's really fun. End of the Line is a really bland RNG minigame that often ends in a draw. Baby Bowser Bonkers is basically Whack-A-Plant from Mario Party 1, but better in every conceivable way. Silly Screws, mash faster than your opponent, but don't overshoot it. This one's great. Crowd Cover is a really great reaction minigame where you have to commit to your answer and be right. TikTok Hop is an interesting take on Hot Rope Jump from Mario Party 1 and 2, but just like those games, this one can last for far too long. Bowser Toss is an alright mashing game. Finding the angle is kinda neat. I have nothing else to say on it, honestly. Motor Rooter is a pretty decent racing minigame. The controls are a little bit finicky though. Foul Play has some really awkward camera angles, and if the chicken runs towards you, you win. Winner's Wheel sure is spinning a wheel. Hey Batter Batter is a baseball minigame with really weird timing. Bobbing balloons is a kind of unique item minigame. Dory Dip has relatively easy timing, just ground pound when your desired item is in the bottom right. Swinging with Sharks has really awkward timing, but the aesthetic is kinda neat, I suppose. Swing and Swipe is insultingly easy. Game Guy's Magic Boxes is just a coin flip, but being able to try your luck 3 times is cool. Game Guy's Sweet Surprise is fun to watch and bet on. Game Guy's Roulette sure is a roulette alright. Game Guy's Lucky 7 is basically dice blackjack. The minigames in Mario Party 3 are a really inconsistent bunch. Mario Party 3 has Mario's Puzzle Party and Eats a Pizza, 2 minigames that manage to get a score of 10, but then there are games like Spotlight Swim and The Beat Goes On, which are legitimately awful. It's interesting that Hudson was able to create some really outstanding minigames here, but some of them really miss the mark. Despite this, Mario Party 3 has the highest minigame mean score so far, with a 5.49 and a median and mode of 6. The minigames here are mostly decent, but this number is definitely swayed by some very high highs and some low lows. Mario Party 3 only has one minigame mode, Random Battle, which is basically the same as Minigame Battle from Mario Party 2. Players need to get 3, 5, or 7 wins first to come out on top. This mode is fun if you just want to hop into some minigames quickly, but there's another side mode here that I've been holding off on talking about, Duel Mode. Duel Mode is so weird to me. It's incredibly different from the standard board gameplay, and not in a good way. So here's the basic premise. You and your opponent have 5 health bars, and your ultimate goal is to bring their health to 0 or to have more than your opponent when you reach the turn limit. You do this by rolling into your opponent with a partner, allowing that partner to attack them. You can also have a partner behind you as well, so if you roll backwards into them, you can attack that way as well. There are 12 partners that you can get, and each of them have their own stats and costs. Yeah, so you have to pay your partner's salaries before every turn, but if you don't have the money to pay them, they leave. You can get money in partners by passing your start space, landing on Game Guy, turning these spaces into your spaces and then landing on them, or by winning minigames. Minigames don't happen after every turn, but instead they happen after the players pass Belltop 5 times or if you land on a minigame space. You can power up your partners by landing on this space, but they'll cost twice as much until you either lose them or return to start. The happening spaces can shake things up in a variety of ways too, like by healing you, swapping locations, giving money, converting your opponent's spaces into yours, and much more. Does this sound insanely convoluted? Well, that's my biggest problem with Duel Mode. It's very weirdly fleshed out, but it also somehow feels like the concept wasn't pushed far enough to make it fun. The concept of a dual version of Mario Party is a great idea, but the partners and additional rules make it really confusing, even for Mario Party fans. Also, you need to learn the stats and benefits of each partner as well, which the game does not explain very well unless if you sit there and read all of the characters' bios. So this means that Duel Mode has a tier list, but to make it even worse, each character starts off with a unique partner, so there's a tier list for character choices too. Here's my tier list for the partners and for the characters. Personally, I'm a firm believer that Mario Party should not have a tier list. Players should always be on even footing, and punishing players for picking Donkey Kong over Peach is really antithetical to what makes Mario Party fun. The boards are also really weird too. They're entirely unique to this mode, but I can't help but feel like they are really uninteresting and don't provide much opportunity for strategy. Blowhard is probably the best one here since this central junction is really convenient for players to be able to cut through the board, but it will flip your partner's position so you have to stay on your toes. Gate Guy is pretty alright too, since you have to pay to cut through the middle, but money is incredibly valuable and hard to come by in this mode. However, there are also maps like Backtrack and Mr. Mover, which have basically no opportunity for strategy, and you basically just have to hope for high rolls. This mode could have been good, but I honestly don't really care for it. If you really love Mario Party 3, you might derive some fun out of this, but I doubt you'll be able to convince a friend to play this with you. Mario Party 3 is a really interesting Mario Party game, but I really do think it is most interesting when all of the people playing are familiar with its mechanics and how Mario Party works. Mario Party 3 is juggling a lot of interesting mechanics at once, and while I do think that these mechanics are mostly good, it might be overwhelming for a new player. The item system is phenomenal, but lots of players might be confused by the usefulness of the Wacky Watch, the Bowser Phone, or the Reverse Shroom. Lots of the boards have a lot of moving parts that could be difficult for new players too, so I think I'll have to give Mario Party 3 3 stars on my beginner friendliness meter. The minigames here are really fun, and I've had a lot of fun playing them with friends, but I found that the boards and items might be a little confusing to people who don't play Mario Party. To be fair though, Mario Party 3 adds some customization options that can really help here, like selecting a specific turn number, handicaps, movement speed, or with the easy minigame set. If you're playing Mario Party 3 with newbies, I recommend that you play on Woody Woods or Chilly Waters. They really are the strongest boards in this game, and it's because their mechanics are implemented well and are easy to understand, especially for newer players. Mario Party 3 is a gem of a Mario Party game. While Mario Party 2 refined and cleaned up the formula established by Mario Party 1, Mario Party 3 takes these mechanics in a new and interesting direction. Not all of these endeavors work out. Duel Mode is pretty lame, and a lot of the boards have some ideas that just don't work too well. However, I think that the good ideas in this game are really good, and I do think that Mario Party 3 was the natural evolution for the Mario Party series after 2. So, and this may or may not be a contentious opinion, but I personally rank Mario Party 3 above Mario Party 2. There's a lot of fun to be had with the minigames, the item system, and I think that the boards offer interesting and unique experiences, even if they are not as consistently good as the boards in Mario Party 2. On the next episode of Mark's Rec Room, we'll be talking about Mario Party 4, the first entry on the GameCube and a game with a reputation for having some stellar minigames. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.